Earlier in our conversation, you talked about the fact that for you and Tim, you guys played around with intermittent fasting, exercising while you're intermittent fasting, and that turned out to not work for you guys. Share that story.
Oh, yes. So I think the whole fasting, intermittent fasting, time restricted feeding thing can get a little confusing because it's like, well, what is it? Is it one meal a day? Is it eat every 3 days? What is it? And for me, I've been teaching more what I call circadian, like clock eating, very much the Sachin Panda work, which I think his work on circadian rhythm is super important. And that's really what we need to think of when we're eating. So I always was eat within an hour or two of waking up. I used to be you have to eat within an hour of waking up. Now I'm like, wait a little bit, eat like 90 minutes to 2 hours, I think is like the sweet spot. And it was always stop eating, 3 to 4 hours before bed and don't snack. And then I started looking at all the intermittent fasting and I kept thinking, it made more sense to me to do what I would call to be an early intermittent faster. Like, everyone I was talking to was doing like 12 to 8. And I went, yeah, but now you're done eating at 8. You shouldn't go to bed till 11. I go to bed like at 9 to 10 o'clock. That doesn't work. And I would get too hungry in the morning, but I tried. So what I did was I pushed it and I was doing like 10 to 6. And so I was going to the gym fasted in the morning. And I did this for about 3 months. And then I was like wanting to, it was all around the DEXA and wanting to get stronger. And I thought, you know what? I just can't work out like I used to work out. I'm going to try eating again before I work out. 30% increase in what I could do at the gym. And I went, all right, what is more important? It was always kind of a head scratcher to me because when you really think about when you're going to the gym, what matters? The quality of the workout is the single most important thing. That's the driver. It's like, what's the volume? How hard can you go? And I was really reduced because I didn't have, I hadn't eaten. So that was the first part. But the other part that got me was this is the reason people will talk about doing a fasted workout is because they want to burn more fat. The reality is, if you're training hard, fat shouldn't be your primary substrate. It should really be glycogen and phosphocreatine. But, if you're really pushing it, you're using more sugar, not fat, right? In fact, I was wearing a CGM at the gym and I was like, I got my blood sugar to 200. I was like, go me, I was like really trying to push it. So I went, this doesn't make sense to me because it's not how much fat you burnt during the workout. It's how much it's being in a calorie deficit at the end of the day so that your body can use stored fat for fuel and being insulin sensitive enough for this to happen. And so that was, I'd been having that argument in my head and then going and working out unfasted after doing fasted workouts for 3 months. I was like, okay, that was ridiculous. And that was actually one of the other shifts we made as we went and did this. And I think that's probably one of the things that really wasn't working well for Tim either, was going in and doing this fasted workout. It's, you look at a lot of these things like keto where people are going, you want to do keto so that your body can use more fat for fuel. It's like, well, but you want your body to use body fat for fuel. So it still needs to be calorically restricted keto. Might be easier to do because you're more satiated, but just make sure we're burning the right fat, right? So, what's your most important thing when you do a workout? How hard can you work out? What volume can you push? If some people do great fasted doing that, but if you don't do it. If I'm going out working out, I'm at a hotel and it's the only time I have to work out is first thing in the morning, I'm not going to eat first. But what I do is I take collagen, creatine, and essential amino acids in a one of these big jugs and take it down to the gym. And I find that allows me, and a big hit of coffee. And then I find that I can pull it off fine.
You talked about a couple of the supplements you're taking to have a mitophagy and senescent cell advantage on those. It gets me thinking about longer fasts. I know you're not a fan of the fasted workouts as you just got into, but do you or Tim ever push longer fasts to get into autophagy and the benefits there?
So one of the great ways to, autophagy is not an on-off switch, as we know. And, I'm still waiting for the research that shows when it actually starts, which I would imagine differs with people in terms of their metabolic health. But I don't know how you'd even track that because this is not an easy, there's not like a biomarker for it. But one of the great ways to trigger autophagy is exercise. In fact, I think that's why people who exercise regularly have such lower cancer rates. Is I think it's from triggering autophagy, doing that cellular renewal through exercise. So that's how I do my autophagy. I do it through exercise. I basically eat within a 9 to 10 hour window. But I'll tell you what's interesting. I've never been a good faster. Never. Now, I'm also, um, I have very genetically weirdly low body fat. Like I don't normally talk about it because it's so low for a female that people get all whacked out about it. But even like my whole life, the first time I ever did a body composition test was in my 20s and it was 10%. Then, then I was a vegan doing all this work, a vegan. Then I went vegan. Then I went and did body composition test a couple years later. I was up at 25%. But that is the only time I've had high body fat. The rest of the time for me, high body fat was 15%. And I would generally sit like when I did it at 39, I was 13.9. When I did it at 59, I was 13.9. I've always been super duper low body fat. And now I'm sitting between 9 and 10% body fat. And I think that's why fasting for me just has never felt great. you know, I tend to eat a low carb diet. So, I could probably deplete out the glycogen stores and have to rely on not a whole lot of body fat. And maybe that's why my body goes, don't do that. I think that you could do like I'm not a big fan of fasting if someone's trying to build muscle, but I think that if you're taking some essential amino acids and doing your resistance training, you can probably pull it off fine. So it really depends what your goals are. But for me, I don't really know, like doing my senolytic, doing my exercise. So
No, you bring in a great point. We're all different, and this might be a better tool for somebody like we were talking about before, metabolically compromised and needing to use different tools, whether it be low carb fasting,
yeah,
to regain that metabolic health. Somebody like you who's, was it 9% or 9 to 10
I
right now?
am, 9%, and my insulin's at 1.5. So, for me, like, it just isn't the tool for me. And again, I love that you refer back to that. I think of these things all as tools. If someone's coming in and I need to restore some insulin sensitivity quickly, and drop some fat, we could be using this. And I'd be doing something like essential amino acids and some resistance training to make sure we could hold on to muscle as we were doing it. So, use the tools based on the goals that you're trying to set. For me, I don't know that it would do anything beneficial.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
This idea that you cannot build muscle as you age is absolutely ridiculous and wrong. And I actually am stronger and more powerful at 61 than I was at 25. I am in better shape now than I was then.